I never thought a single text could shatter your entire sense of reality. I was 24, living in the kind of small American town where everyone knows your business before you even finish telling it. My life had been simple: college graduate, working at a local hardware store, dating Chloe, my girlfriend of 3 years. She was beautiful, funny, and, as far as I believed, loyal. That illusion ended one Thursday evening. I had stayed late at work that day, fixing a delivery error, and when I finally checked my phone, there it was, a message from an unknown number. At first, I thought it was spam, but the words hit me like a brick. "I can't stop thinking about you. I had to see you today." The sender was Chloe's coworker. My stomach sank, but I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was nothing, just a friendly text. I rushed home to confront Chloe. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, completely unaware of the storm about to hit. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "Can we talk?" Her face shifted immediately, an expression I'd seen 100 times but never read correctly. She looked guilty, hesitant, and suddenly small. "Sure," she said, putting her phone down. The conversation was short but brutal. Chloe confessed to everything. It wasn't just flirtation. It had been weeks, maybe months, of secret meetings and stolen moments behind my back. I felt my heart collapse piece by piece. Everything we had built, dinners, vacations, even the tiny traditions of small-town life, was a lie. I walked out of our apartment that night, the cool air hitting my face, trying to breathe through the disbelief. The streets of our town were quiet, almost mocking in their normalcy. Kids playing in the yard, neighbors chatting, the occasional car passing by. Life went on, but mine felt frozen, suspended in that moment of betrayal. For days, I avoided everyone. I couldn't look at Chloe without seeing the betrayal. Couldn't be near our usual spots without remembering how she had lied, how I had trusted her blindly. Work was just a blur. I'd mechanically perform tasks, my mind elsewhere, thinking about revenge, closure, anything that could make this pain make sense. And then I met her. Her name was Isabella. She was 34, a few years older than me, and unlike anyone I'd ever met. I first saw her at a local coffee shop, one I frequented during my aimless walks. She was sitting alone, reading a book, and there was a calm confidence about her I couldn't ignore. I don't know what compelled me to sit near her, but something, maybe desperation, maybe fate, drove me to start a conversation. We talked about everything and nothing. I told her a vague version of my heartbreak. She didn't judge. She listened, really listened, with eyes that seemed to understand things I couldn't say out loud. And then she laughed, softly, knowingly, and I felt a strange warmth I hadn't felt since before Chloe. Isabella had her own scars. Her past relationships had left her wary, but she wasn't bitter. She had this air of experience, a kind of subtle wisdom that made me trust her instantly. Within hours, I found myself sharing things I hadn't even admitted to myself. And when she smiled, I felt the faint stirrings of something dangerous and thrilling. Attraction, yes, but also complicity. By the end of that first encounter, I realized something. Isabella wasn't just a distraction from the heartbreak. She was someone who could help me channel it, someone who might understand my need for retribution. And as I walked home that night, thinking about Chloe and her betrayal, I knew that my life had taken a turn I could never undo. By the time the weekend rolled around, Isabella and I had formed an unspoken rhythm. We met for coffee, walked through the quiet streets of our small town, and sometimes just sat in silence, letting the world move around us while we processed everything we couldn't say aloud. There was a tension, electric and persistent, that neither of us ignored. It was Saturday when she first suggested we take a little walk down memory lane regarding Chloe. We sat on a bench near the old park, the autumn leaves crunching underfoot, and Isabella leaned closer, her voice calm but deliberate. "If you really want to feel better, Liam, you can't just wait for Chloe to realize her mistakes. You have to make her feel the consequences of her actions. Not in a cruel way, just enough to remind her that she hurt someone who deserves better." Her words hit me hard. I realized she was right. I'd been spinning in a loop of anger and sadness, but I hadn't acted. Part of me knew that Chloe wouldn't even notice my pain unless I forced her to. And the thought of doing it with Isabella, someone smart, confident, and several steps ahead, made it feel almost exhilarating. Over the next few days, we started plotting quietly, carefully. Nothing illegal, nothing reckless, just clever ways to show Chloe she had lost more than she realized. Sometimes it was as simple as subtly sharing stories with mutual friends, hinting at her dishonesty without revealing everything. Other times, Isabella coached me on how to carry myself in ways that projected strength rather than heartbreak. I noticed the change almost immediately. My shoulders were straighter, my voice firmer, my gaze sharper. Chloe couldn't touch me anymore. Not really. The nights we spent together began to change too. At first, it was just lingering touches and shared laughter. But one evening, as we walked back from the coffee shop under the glow of streetlights, our hands brushed, then clasped, and the tension that had been simmering finally ignited. We didn't rush anything. Everything was slow, measured, electric. A stolen kiss here, a lingering hand on the small of my back there. It felt dangerous and intoxicating all at once. I'd never experienced anything like it before. The thrill of new intimacy mixed with the sweetness of someone who seemed to understand my soul. Isabella wasn't just guiding me through Chloe's betrayal. She was teaching me about myself. She encouraged me to embrace my desires, my intelligence, my cunning, and, unexpectedly, my capacity for passion. Every plan we made, every subtle revenge tactic we executed, brought us closer. Every conversation, every laugh, every shared secret deepened our connection. And yet, we both knew we were walking a fine line. This wasn't just about Chloe anymore. This was about trust, power, and the fragile balance between justice and obsession. We had to be careful. A single misstep could ruin everything we were building together. Despite the caution, the attraction between us couldn't be denied. Isabella's hand lingering on mine during planning sessions, her eyes meeting mine across the table with a knowing look, and the quiet, steady way she supported me. All of it created a magnetic pull I couldn't resist. I was drawn to her not just because of what she could help me do, but because of who she was, confident, alluring, and wise in ways I could only hope to understand. And all the while, Chloe remained oblivious, her betrayal now setting the stage for a reckoning she had no idea was coming. By the following week, Isabella and I had settled into a quiet routine, our meetings always purposeful, our conversations loaded with subtle strategies and shared glances that spoke louder than words. I felt alive again, sharp and alert, like the weight of Chloe's betrayal had transformed into something I could control. Every encounter with Isabella reminded me that I wasn't just a victim anymore. It was during one of these late-night coffee shop sessions that Isabella leaned back, her gaze thoughtful. "Liam," she said, "you need to remember, revenge isn't about hurting her for the sake of anger. It's about reclaiming your life and making her see what she lost." Her words hit me harder than I expected. She wasn't just helping me plot. She was guiding me emotionally, helping me rebuild the confidence Chloe had tried to destroy. We began small. A few strategically timed posts on social media, just subtle enough to suggest Chloe's lies and unreliability, without exposing everything. It was clever, quiet, and precise, the kind of revenge that left a mark without being reckless. And with each small victory, I felt a thrill. Isabella's satisfaction mirrored my own, and it deepened the bond between us. She wasn't just a partner in this plot. She was my confidant, my teacher, and increasingly, the object of a growing desire I couldn't ignore. The attraction between us simmered beneath the surface. One evening, as we were walking back to the parking lot, our hands brushed. I didn't pull away, and she didn't either. There was a charged pause, a breathless moment, before she finally spoke, her voice low and teasing. "You've changed, Liam." "I like it." That simple comment sent a shiver through me. I realized how much I had come to rely on her, not just for guidance or revenge, but for the spark she ignited inside me. We began spending more time together outside of plotting Chloe's downfall. Quiet dinners, long drives through the town's outskirts, and even casual movie nights at Isabella's place. Each moment was loaded with tension, yet careful, deliberate. Nothing reckless, nothing overt. Just enough closeness to fuel the fire between us while keeping the world, and Chloe, at a distance. Then came the first bold move. Chloe had organized a small party at her apartment, inviting mutual friends. Isabella suggested we go, not as ourselves exactly, but in a way that would subtly expose her duplicity. We discussed it quietly over coffee, plotting how to arrive, how to interact, and what messages to let slip. Every detail mattered. Every glance, every comment could tip the scales. The night of the party, I felt a strange mix of nerves and excitement. Isabella was beside me, calm and poised, as always. She whispered, "Remember, it's about subtlety. Make her notice without making it obvious." I nodded, feeling the weight of anticipation and adrenaline. This wasn't just revenge anymore. It was a test, a game, and a delicate dance between all three of us. Inside the apartment, Chloe was her usual confident self, laughing, chatting, unaware that the world around her was about to shift. Isabella and I entered together, casual, unassuming, yet acutely aware of every detail. The way Chloe smiled, the people she was close to, the subtle glances she threw our way. From the start, the tension was palpable. Isabella's presence calmed and emboldened me at the same time. I realized how much I had changed, how much I had grown in confidence, in strategy, in understanding myself. And it was all because of her. As the night unfolded, our plan began to take shape, small but precise. Each step carefully calculated to leave Chloe unsettled without drawing overt attention. And with every passing hour, the connection between Isabella and me deepened, not just as co-conspirators, but as something far more dangerous and thrilling. The party had started quietly enough, just Chloe laughing with her friends, music low, the soft clinking of glasses. But Isabella and I moved through it like shadows, observing, noting, dropping little hints, carefully orchestrated moments that suggested Chloe's secrets were not as hidden as she thought. We didn't speak loudly, didn't make a scene. Every word, every gesture was deliberate, designed to make her feel the tension without exposing our full hand. I watched her closely. Chloe's confident smile flickered a few times, subtle shifts in her posture, the occasional glance at me that didn't reach her eyes. She sensed something was off, but she couldn't put her finger on it. The thrill of that subtle control made my pulse race. Isabella noticed too, and there was a quiet satisfaction in her expression, a shared acknowledgement that we were executing the plan perfectly. Later, as we stepped onto the balcony for some fresh air, Isabella leaned in slightly, her breath brushing against my ear. "You're doing well," she murmured. "Keep it calm, keep it precise. Let her doubt herself, not us." I nodded, feeling the surge of confidence coursing through me. Chloe wasn't going to break me again. Not now. Not ever. We started planting small seeds of awareness among her friends, casual comments that hinted at Chloe's dishonesty. Nothing explicit, just enough to make them question her version of events. And every reaction we noticed, every flicker of doubt, fueled our momentum. I realized how empowering it was to channel my pain into action instead of wallowing in it. With Isabella by my side, I felt unstoppable, cunning in a way I never had before. Amid all of this, our personal connection intensified. One evening, after a long day of planning and subtle manipulations, Isabella invited me over under the guise of reviewing the next phase of our plan. Once inside her apartment, the tension between us became impossible to ignore. Our hands brushed over documents and phones, lingering just a second too long, eyes locking with unspoken understanding. "Liam," she said softly, her voice low and steady, "we've been careful, but I want you to remember, none of this is just about revenge. It's about us too, about trust, connection, and yes, desire." Her words sent a shiver down my spine. The line between planning and passion blurred. Slowly, deliberately, our hands intertwined, fingers lacing together. We were careful, cautious, but the electricity was undeniable. That night, we didn't rush. Everything was measured, slow, a dance of teasing glances, touches, and whispered words. The intimacy was exhilarating, tangled with strategy, yet deeply personal. It was more than physical attraction. It was the trust we had built, the shared understanding of pain, ambition, and cunning. In the days that followed, Chloe began to act subtly differently. She seemed on edge, more cautious, even a little paranoid. Conversations she had with friends hinted at doubt, at second-guessing herself. Isabella and I watched from a distance, barely able to conceal our satisfaction. It was working. Our carefully executed plan, combined with our growing bond, was reshaping the dynamic completely. And yet, with all this progress, I couldn't ignore the new emotions forming inside me. I was drawn to Isabella in ways that went beyond revenge. Every smile, Every touch, every quiet word of encouragement made my heart race. She had become not just my partner in strategy, but someone I craved, someone I wanted to trust completely. For the first time since Chloe's betrayal, I felt alive. Not just angry or heartbroken, but powerful, alert, and dangerously connected to someone who understood me completely. And as the small town moved on, oblivious to the storm quietly brewing, I knew the game had only just begun. By now, Isabella and I were operating like a well-oiled team. Every movement, every word, every glance was calculated. Chloe's subtle unease had become apparent to anyone paying attention, and we watched it unfold with careful satisfaction. But it wasn't just about her anymore. It was about us, about testing boundaries, about exploring the connection that had grown between us so quickly, so dangerously. One evening, Isabella suggested we escalate our plan just slightly. Nothing reckless, just a calculated reveal. We need to make her feel the consequences in a way she can't ignore, she said, her eyes sparkling with that calm, dangerous energy I was slowly addicted to. We decided on a social experiment, a casual meet-up with mutual friends, but subtly arranged so that Chloe would overhear certain truths about herself, without realizing we were orchestrating it. When the night arrived, Isabella and I executed it flawlessly. Casual conversations, shared laughs, strategically placed remarks. I could see Chloe's reaction, quick glances, slight hesitation, even a nervous laugh that didn't reach her eyes. She was aware something was off, but she couldn't pinpoint it. Every flicker of doubt thrilled me. Isabella leaned in occasionally, her hand brushing mine just lightly, a subtle reminder of our shared purpose and the growing intimacy between us. Afterward, we walked through the quiet streets, both of us exhilarated by the small victory. Isabella stopped under a streetlight, turning toward me. "You've changed, Liam," she said softly. "This isn't the same boy Chloe knew. You're stronger, smarter, more aware of yourself." Her words were more than encouragement. They were a mirror reflecting the man I had become under her influence. Our partnership outside the revenge plot was just as intense. Our conversations moved beyond Chloe, dreams, regrets, ambitions, fears. I felt an intimacy forming that I had never expected, a connection deeper than simple attraction. And yet, the tension remained, a delicate thread weaving desire into every interaction. That night, Isabella invited me to her apartment, ostensibly to review the next phase of our plan. But the atmosphere was charged. Small touches lingered, her hand on my arm, a brush of fingers over my notebook. Every movement seemed deliberate, yet undeniably personal. We didn't rush. Everything was slow, measured, and charged with anticipation. The line between strategy and passion blurred completely. A shared laugh, a lingering gaze, a whispered word. They became catalysts for moments of subtle intimacy. Isabella wasn't just a partner in revenge. She was teaching me about myself, about the power of desire mixed with trust, about the thrill of shared secrets. Over the next week, Chloe's unease intensified. Mutual friends began commenting subtly about her changed behavior, her uncharacteristic hesitation, her growing paranoia. Isabella and I observed quietly, savoring the precision of our plan. It was working, and with every small success, our bond deepened. Yet, with all the plotting and intrigue, I couldn't ignore the emotional pull Isabella had on me. She was more than a guide, more than a co-conspirator. She had become the center of my attention, a mix of desire and admiration that I hadn't felt in years. Her confidence, intelligence, and subtle dominance over the situation were intoxicating, drawing me in further than I expected. By the end of the week, I realized something. Chloe's betrayal had led me here, to Isabella, to a life charged with strategy, intimacy, and passion. And as the small town carried on, oblivious to the storm we had quietly unleashed, I knew this was only the beginning of a dangerous, thrilling journey. By now, Chloe's subtle unraveling was impossible to ignore. Every time Isabella and I crossed paths with her in town, I could see the tension in her shoulders, the quick flickers of uncertainty in her eyes. It was intoxicating, seeing someone who once had complete control over me now unsure of themselves, and knowing that I had played a role in it. Isabella suggested we escalate things slightly, still subtle but harder for Chloe to ignore. It's time she starts questioning everything she thought was certain, she said, her voice low and steady. And Liam, it's also time we stop holding back in other ways. Her words carried an edge I hadn't heard before. Confidence mixed with something more personal, something dangerous and thrilling. We began our next phase carefully. Social gatherings, mutual friends, and casual encounters became stages for small revelations. I'd mention Chloe's untrustworthiness in passing, always casual, never confrontational. Isabella would add her own observations, her tone gentle but knowing. Slowly, like a careful storm, Chloe's world began to tilt. During one of these encounters at the local diner, Chloe caught my gaze. She tried to mask her reaction, but I could see the flicker of doubt, the unsteady blink, the subtle shift in posture. Isabella was beside me, her hand brushing against mine under the table, a reminder of our partnership, our shared purpose. The thrill of it, the intimacy mixed with strategy, sent a shiver down my spine. Later that evening, Isabella and I sat on the back porch of her apartment, a quiet night settling around us. "You've come a long way," she said softly, letting her hand rest over mine. "Not just in handling Chloe, but in everything." Her eyes locked onto mine, and I felt that same pull, that same magnetic tension from weeks ago, but now deeper, more urgent. We didn't rush things, but that night, the line between strategy and intimacy blurred further. A touch on my arm lingered longer than necessary. A look became a shared understanding. Our conversations moved from tactics to confessions, to moments of quiet vulnerability. For the first time in weeks, I felt completely seen. Isabella wasn't just guiding me. She was challenging me, tempting me, and pulling me into something more complex than I had anticipated. The town around us carried on as usual. Neighbors waved, kids played, the distant hum of traffic filled the air. Yet in our small bubble, every glance, every touch, every whispered word was amplified. Chloe's looming presence in our plans made it all the more charged. Her ignorance of what was happening heightened every feeling, every subtle interaction. By the end of that week, it was clear, Chloe was losing her sense of control, and Isabella and I were growing inseparable. The thrill of revenge had merged seamlessly with the thrill of intimacy. Every small success in destabilizing Chloe reinforced our connection, and every shared secret, every subtle touch, made the tension between us almost unbearable. For the first time, I realized how much I craved Isabella, not just as a partner in strategy, but as something far more intimate, far more essential. And as the town slept quietly, unaware of the storm we had quietly orchestrated, I understood that the game we were playing had shifted. It was no longer just about Chloe. It was about us and the dangerous, thrilling path we had chosen together. The culmination of our plan was approaching, and the tension between Isabella and me had never been higher. Every glance, every word, every subtle move was calculated, but beneath it all simmered desire, trust, and a dangerous thrill. Chloe's cracks were becoming impossible to ignore. Her smiles were forced, her laughter strained, and her confidence had eroded into hesitation. Isabella suggested we stage a final, subtle revelation at a small gathering of friends in town, a chance to let Chloe see, without doubt, that her betrayal hadn't gone unnoticed. "We're not destroying her life," she said, leaning close so only I could hear. "We're reminding her who she hurt and showing her that some things have consequences." Her words carried weight, authority, and a quiet excitement that sent a shiver down my spine. That evening, we arrived at the gathering together, walking in side by side, our presence calm but deliberate. Chloe was there, greeting friends and pretending everything was normal, but I could see the tension immediately. She glanced at us, eyes briefly locking on mine, and I saw recognition flicker before she quickly masked it. Isabella's hand brushed mine subtly, grounding me, reminding me that we were united in more ways than one. Through careful conversation and well-placed comments, we let Chloe hear pieces of truth, hints of what people already knew, and her reactions were priceless. Small pauses, forced smiles, nervous gestures, she couldn't hide her unease. Every subtle victory strengthened the bond between Isabella and me. There was no rush, no overt confrontation, just the quiet, piercing effectiveness of our plan. After the gathering, Isabella and I walked home through the empty streets, the crisp air carrying the scent of autumn leaves and faint smoke from fireplaces. She squeezed my hand lightly, her eyes holding mine. "You've grown so much, Liam," she said softly. "You've taken control of your pain, and you've done it with elegance, not recklessness. I'm proud of you." Her praise sent warmth through me, mingling with the lingering thrill of what we'd accomplished together. Back at her apartment, the tension between us reached a new peak. Every brush of skin, every glance, every touch seemed amplified, charged with unspoken longing. Isabella had become more than a partner in strategy. She was my confidant, my guide, and my desire. We explored that closeness carefully, deliberately, letting the intimacy build in a slow, consuming rhythm. Each moment with her was electric, intoxicating, and filled with a depth I hadn't expected. Yet Chloe's presence lingered in the background, even in her absence. Knowing she was aware, even slightly, that she was no longer in control made everything between Isabella and me more intense. Our triumph in the plan was intertwined with the passion that had grown between us. Desire and strategy merged seamlessly, each feeding the other, creating a bond that was as thrilling as it was dangerous. By the end of the night, I understood something profoundly. Chloe's betrayal had led me to Isabella, not just to a plan for revenge, but to a connection I craved, one that challenged me, thrilled me, and made me feel fully alive. We had transformed our pain into power, our heartbreak into intimacy, and in doing so, had become a unit, unstoppable, connected, and dangerously close. The storm we had orchestrated had reached its quiet climax. Chloe would never see me the same way again. And with Isabella by my side, I was ready to embrace whatever came next, both in our shared intrigue and in the passion that had grown from the ashes of betrayal. The final phase of our plan unfolded quietly, deliberately, like a slow-burning crescendo. Chloe was on edge, her confidence unraveling with every subtle move Isabella and I made. Friends whispered, side glances were exchanged, and every interaction reminded her, without a single confrontation, that she had lost control. She didn't know the full extent of what we had orchestrated, and that was precisely the point. One evening, Isabella suggested a small dinner with mutual friends, a casual gathering that would serve as the perfect stage for the last subtle reveal. "We don't need drama," she said, her voice calm but insistent. "Just a final touch to make Chloe realize everything she's lost, and then we let it settle." I nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. It wasn't about humiliation. It was about closure and reclaiming what had been taken from me. At the dinner, Chloe moved through the room, smiling nervously, trying to maintain the appearance of normalcy. Isabella and I entered together, calm and poised, our presence understated but commanding. Every word we spoke, every glance we exchanged, was loaded with double meaning, carefully choreographed to land where it would hurt the most, without being overt. Subtle hints were dropped in conversations, casual mentions of loyalty, trust, and honesty that Chloe couldn't ignore. I watched her reaction closely, a flicker of recognition, a forced laugh, hands twisting nervously. Isabella squeezed my hand under the table, a small, electric reminder of our unity. I felt a thrill unlike anything I'd experienced. Power, revenge, and desire all intertwined. After the dinner, we walked through the quiet streets, the town bathed in the soft glow of streetlights. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and distant fires. Isabella reached for my hand, her fingers lacing with mine, grounding me in a way only she could. "It's done," she whispered, her voice soft but firm. "You've reclaimed yourself, Liam. You've shown her, and yourself, what matters." Back at her apartment, the atmosphere between us shifted. The slow tension that had been building over weeks finally released. We didn't rush, but our touches lingered, our glances deepened, and every movement was deliberate, charged with emotion. Isabella had become my anchor, my guide, my desire. The intimacy we shared was no longer just about the thrill of revenge. It was about trust, connection, and passion born from shared experience and understanding. In the following days, Chloe began to retreat, quietly, subtly, her pride intact, but her influence diminished. The town continued on as usual, unaware of the storm we had orchestrated and the quiet justice that had been delivered. Isabella and I, however, had forged something lasting, an unspoken bond built from heartbreak, strategy, and intimacy. One evening, as we sat together watching the sunset over the outskirts of town, Isabella leaned her head on my shoulder. "You've changed," she said softly. "You're stronger, wiser, and you've learned how to protect yourself and to open yourself to someone you can trust." I realized she was right. Chloe's betrayal had been devastating, but it had led me to Isabella, to a connection I would never have expected, a mix of trust, desire, and partnership that was both thrilling and grounding. We didn't need grand declarations. The quiet moments, the shared smiles, the intimacy built on mutual understanding, it was enough. Together, we had taken pain and turned it into power, loss into passion, and betrayal into a bond that neither Chloe nor the world could touch. And as the small town slept, oblivious to everything that had unfolded, I knew one thing for certain. Whatever came next, Isabella and I would face it together, stronger, wiser, and more connected than ever.